The sheer amount of debt held by foreigners is unimaginable. It's trillions of dollars held by those outside the country, giving them pull, particularly China and Japan, who together own $2 trillion worth. There is a risk associated with any purchase of debt because the investor needs to know that there is always the possibility of not being able to pay back. But as Alan Greenspan once said, quote, because we can always print money to do that. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. This is an issue that I cover regularly. Every month the Treasury puts out the data. Every month I do a video. I like to track this information. I think it is extremely important to follow it on a monthly basis, to read the details, and to, of course, read between the lines. I'm going to show you the charts today that you need to know. Let's get into it right away. Here you can see the data directly from the Treasury's own website. If you want to search this for yourself, you can look up the major foreign holders of Treasury securities. So all you got to do is go to a search engine, type that in, and you will get the treasury.gov website. I want to show you that this is the data from May of 2019. Okay, so that is the newest numbers. As you can see at the very, very bottom, it shows you from July 16th, 2019. So I just want to make that clear. I need to every single time. Japan and China are clearly the top two holders of US debt. You can see right here that China has almost the exact same as Japan. We are looking at about $1.1 trillion worth. Over the last few months, China has actually been selling their treasuries. Now they, of course, still hold a considerable amount, but I'm just showing you the trend. I will give you the chart in just a second and we could see a little further back how this all looks, but we're basically looking at over the past year what they have been doing, and you can see head over heels they have been consumed by US debt. Looking at these two countries in addition to the United Kingdom, Brazil, Ireland, Switzerland, Luxembourg, and other shell countries. Oftentimes these are used as a shell. I've covered this many times before. You can look at the grand total, near $6.5 trillion. This just shows you how much of an appetite investors have for US debt, because like Alan Greenspan said, they're always going to print money to pay you back with confetti, so investors will eat that up. Now I just wanted to show you some more detail about this. If you want to know other names in the list, of course you can hit pause, you can look at them more clearly, or I will have a link in the description to give you a better look at all of this data. I always include the sources. I know that is very important to you. You can see China's holdings of Treasury over the period of time from, let's say, 2016, it shows us up until the present, how they had begun to purchase more in 2017, but slowly that has declined. Now, if we go back further over the last several years, you actually see that this is a trend. They have been following this trend line now for quite some time, and I've been showing you this. Basically, this has been a continued action for several years, okay? So they have been trying to wean off. At the same time, their gold purchases have been going higher and higher. So that's oftentimes what they're trying to do with diversification. It doesn't mean that they're selling off tomorrow. It doesn't mean that they'll ever sell off, but at least at this time, they have been definitely reducing their exposure to US debt. Here's a better look at that. The red line is China and the green line is Japan, and just want to make that clear that this line here, as you see over the last few years, has been apparent as we can see this moving through time. Japan doing the same thing, except throughout basically end of December into 2019, they have been purchasing quite a bit of these treasuries. So it looks like if this continues for maybe another month or two, this will happen to switch over. Japan will become the greatest holder of US debt and China will move into the second place position. And there's a big gap in between that second place and that third place there, but ultimately they are both holding a considerable portion. Now you can look at it two ways. You can see how this is very beneficial to the United States because it allows them to fund their schemes, but if they do reduce their exposure over the next few years and they just continue this trend, then we could have a very different scenario going on in the global financial system. There has been another clear and obvious trend: the UK holdings of US Treasuries. Every single year over year, the UK has been purchasing more and more and more. They're right now at over $300 billion worth, and they seem to be in line with continuing this. Doesn't seem like it's going to stop anytime soon. Treasury purchases and sales by foreign central banks is now in the negative, and it has been so for a while. Okay, this has been a trend that has been continuing for several years. Now, you could suggest it's for one reason or another. Is it because of the strength of the US dollar? Is it because of the weakness of the other currencies? There could be any number of reasons, but I thought it would be important just to show you here in the charts. In connection with that, you can see the foreign holdings change in US corporate stocks. We have been watching this month after month, I think 13 months in a row, maybe even longer here, as you can just see that foreigners are simply dumping US debt in general. That does not mean all of these countries are dumping US debt. That is not the case right now. However, we are in a contraction here at this time, as you can see. That could change at any minute, but as of right now, that's where we stand. Foreign flows in and out of US stocks, looking at the 12-month moving average, and this has also been trending down for years. You could see that from 2017 and on, it has really been declining. So we've been watching here, the stock market in the United States has been going higher and higher, yet foreigners have been selling off. So the money hasn't been going into where it was previously. We've been watching this happen now for quite a while, even though stocks basically since 2009 have moved up in a straight line for the most part. We have watched foreigners go in the other direction. That could be once again because of the US dollar being too strong, but there are other reasons for this as well. American institutions and individuals added $1.19 trillion of U.S. Treasuries to their holdings, now at $7.7 trillion. U.S. banks are large holders with $500 billion in Treasury holdings at the end of Q4, according to the FDIC. So think about that. You're talking about $500 billion worth. That would put them third in the list. Of course, that's the foreign holders, but just to give you an idea of the magnitude of U.S. banks and how much of the US debt that they hold. Now, this could be a big problem for these institutions, for the US government, if we start to see another financial crisis take place. So I would definitely keep my eyes on that. Other large U.S. institutional holders include pension funds, mutual funds, hedge funds, corporations, and others. Individuals directly or indirectly also hold a portion of the $7.7 trillion in Treasury securities. In total, these American institutions and individuals held 35% of the U.S. gross national debt. The creditor always holds the power in their hands. That works if you're small time or big time, okay? So it's very important to note what is happening here with the United States and their debt. I'm seeing big changes that are taking place over the last few years. We have watched the world basically saying to the US, we do not like the fact that you dominate, that you control. That didn't really exist 20, 30 years ago. Nobody was really saying that. Now today, we at least have the rhetoric. Now, I don't think anything's going to change in the near future, but we clearly see these countries and the European Union, for instance, that are coming out and suggesting that they're willing to push back against the United States in some cases. Of course, they can't do it in all cases because the US has the SWIFT system. They basically control the IMF, other institutions out there. However, we can watch as there is these changes like the AIIB from China and others that are really starting to take hold. Who holds the $22 trillion US debt? Now you can see the breakdown here, although it's from a few months ago. It just gives you an idea that you can see foreign holders $6.4 trillion, US institutions and individuals $7.7, and then you have US government entities and the Fed. Now this, of course, is always changing, but it just gives you a breakdown showing you that it's pretty even when you think about it with the US institutions and individuals and foreign holders. They both have a big chunk of this, and that is never a good thing. Okay, you always want to have the majority of your debt held internally. I think you're going to have a big problem in the future if the United States has trouble with their debt. Foreign purchases of American homes plunged 36% as Chinese buyers flee the market. I just wanted to show you this because it's interconnected with it, but there's clearly a problem with China and the US right now, and we can see a lot of tensions. I've watched China purchasing less US debt, less real estate, less assets, and businesses in general. We have watched more sales, if anything. So this right now is not a good sign for the United States and for the potential down the road. If there are problems domestically, of course, the United States will need more consumption from foreigners in any regard. That's all for this video. If you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up. When you hit that like button, you are supporting me, so I do appreciate that very much. If you want the financial education you were not taught in school, these two books have everything you need. All the details are located at the link in the description. If you want the audiobook, that's available at themoneygps.com. If you want to know what's going on in the financial system right now, then definitely check this one out. I think it's really important, particularly after watching this video. If you haven't seen it already, definitely click on it and I will see you there.